Good afternoon and welcome to The Appeal Live, a co-production of Now This and The Appeal. I'm Emily Galvan-Almanza and I'm very excited to be joining you today with a special exclusive episode. But first I want to tell you a little bit of a story of how we got here. So in 2003, Rosa Jimenez was babysitting her 1-year-old daughter and another 21-month-old boy when she noticed the boy was having trouble breathing, he was turning purple, and she tried, unsuccessfully, to clear his airway. She screamed for help. A neighbor called 911. The paramedics came, and they were able to dislodge what they later learned was a wad of paper towels from the boy's throat. Every parent's nightmare. The child survived, but the lack of oxygen later proved fatal, causing serious brain damage that led to his death 3 months later. Prosecutors in Travis County, Texas at that time were intent on pinning this child's tragic death on Rosa, who at the time was 7 months pregnant with her son, and they charged her with murder. They built their entire case on a flawed theory that it was impossible for a toddler to accidentally ingest a wad of paper towels. But Rosa couldn't afford to hire a credible expert at that time to push back against the state's theory that toddlers can't eat paper towels. So she was forced to rely on a single forensic pathologist who testified that the boy's death must have been an accident. But that testimony wasn't enough for the jury, who convicted her. And in 2005, Rosa was convicted of murder and sentenced to 99 years in prison for a crime that prosecutors now say likely never happened. So for years, Rosa's lawyers have fought to free her from prison, maintaining that this boy's death was a tragic accident and that the prosecution's claim that Rosa had killed him was based entirely on junk science. On Wednesday, more than 15 years after this conviction, those efforts finally paid off. A judge made the decision to release Rosa, in part due to the introduction of new testimony from 3 pediatric airway specialists who disagreed with the original trial experts who claimed the boy's death couldn't have been accidental. Now the Travis County DA's office, under new leadership, although the same office that once secured Rosa's conviction, has joined in her defense. One of their original prosecution experts, in fact, has changed her opinion after reviewing the new testimony from the specialists, and under the leadership of newly elected DA Jose Garza, the office wrote this week that Ms. Jimenez is entitled to relief because she is likely innocent. But Rosa's ordeal isn't over yet. The judge who freed her has recommended findings to the Court of Criminal Appeals, which will now make the final decision to stand with or overturn Ms. Jimenez's conviction, or to call for a retrial. But this is still a major step toward justice for Rosa. We are absolutely feeling incredibly honored to be joined here today by Rosa Jimenez herself, along with her lawyer from the Innocence Project, Vanessa Potkin, Travis County District Attorney Jose Garza. I believe there's also Sarah Brown on Rosa's team. We've got a great group here today. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. Rosa, I want to begin with you because, first of all, I just want to say congratulations. This must be an incredible moment, and I can't imagine what you've been through. But I thought maybe you could start by telling us how it feels now to be on the outside after all these years.
Everything is new. I'm excited. I haven't been able to sleep in 4 days. Part of me is kind of scared that I'm going to wake up and be back in prison. But I'm just taking it day by day.
That sounds very reasonable under the circumstances. I know that time on the inside can be really hard to withstand physically as well as mentally, and I wanted to ask how your health has been.
We're going to see a doctor really soon, but the last time I got checked in the hospital, I'm in the last stage of kidney disease. I need dialysis and eventually a transplant.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I know that these years have taken a lot more from you beyond aspects of your health and well-being. And I'm wondering if you could talk us through everything that happened with your family while you were away. So I know you gave birth to a son. He has grown. Your daughter was just a year old when this started, and I understand that she's now getting married. So I'm wondering if you could talk us through what it's like to sort of be reacquainted with the life you were taken away from.
They took them, the foster parents took my kids. They were raised by them, and that time we didn't have phone calls, so it was very hard for us to communicate. So our relationship broke between us during the years that I was locked up. So when my daughter turned 18 years old, she decided to get her a cell phone. So maybe it would be easier to go straight to her instead of the foster parents. So we are like reestablishing our relationship, but we lost so many years, literally 16 years lost because I couldn't communicate with them. And my son, today they visiting me, and today is the first time that I actually got to hug him after almost 18 years. So it's exciting, overwhelming, and I feel so blessed at the same time. But I believe that everything is going to work for their good.
Thank you for sharing that. That sounds like an incredible moment to have had today. Vanessa, let's talk for a second about what happened all these years ago that has caused so much harm for the last few decades. Why Rosa was convicted in the first place, and why it was so hard to fight her conviction. Can you walk us through what happened with the initial expert testimony that sort of reinforced this junk science idea that the death could not have been an accident?
Well, what happened in this case was a very tragic and, unusual accident. And, when the paramedics responded to the frantic 911 calls after the child was choking, they removed the paper towels. They just thought, they had never seen anything like it before. So they jumped to the erroneous conclusion that, because this was unusual, because it was a relatively large, wad of paper towels, it couldn't have been an accident. And that was similarly what happened with doctors who testified at trial. They just said, I don't see how this could happen. Now, none of those doctors had specific training in pediatric airways. And so they went in and, based on just the fact that they had never seen it, testified that in their expert opinion, categorically, this was impossible. It couldn't have happened as an accident. And because Rosa was the only adult home babysitting, that testimony just equated with a guilty verdict. But that testimony was completely false. And, the expertise of pediatric airway medicine is, one that is shared by about, 50 ENTs around the country. It's highly specialized. But for all of these people, when they started to review the case, they were horrified that Rosa had been convicted. They could not believe that someone could come to the conclusion that this was intentional, and donated their time to get behind this case, because for them, it wasn't even a close question. This was clear cut. This was an accident. It was a tragedy that happened. It is so horrific that, the child lost his life. And what happened to Rosa was horrific, to be, to have a 1-year-old child and to be 7 months pregnant and have to give birth in prison and have that child, taken away without the bonding. And, it took 18 years to get to this point today. And why is that? It's because, historically, the system has just been about defending convictions. When you look at appeals or post-conviction units and prosecutors' offices throughout the country, there has been a mindset that their job is to figure out a way to defend the conviction and uphold it at all costs. And I think that that's what's so critical about people with a different perspective, like Jose Garza taking office and coming into, and saying, no, we're about getting to the truth. And that may be, going back into a case and listening to the opinions, like really being open to what is the medical evidence saying, not how can we twist this to, maintain the conviction.
Yeah, DA Garza, I want to talk with you a minute about sort of what happened back then and also what your office is doing now to make sure that ideally this never happens again. Because I will say candidly, as a parent, like all parents know that the number of accidents that can happen to children is infinite. And the capacity for tragedy in families is infinite. And I'm wondering, I guess I'm having a really hard time understanding the mindset of prosecutors back in 2003, which I know was way before your time. You might not even have been thinking about being a prosecutor at that point. But back then, you had a group of professionals, attorneys, who were intent on putting someone in a cage for what turned out to be a totally accidental death. So I'm wondering if you could talk about whether that intentionality was specific to this office, or is it reflective of a broader trend among prosecutors? And what are you doing at this point to change that?
Well, first of all, I just want to say to Ms. Jimenez how sorry I am for all of the suffering that you and your family have endured for this long process. And, we have to point out, as has been pointed out, that this case is an absolute tragedy. It is a tragedy for Ms. Jimenez and her family. And it is also a tragedy for Ms. Gutierrez, who lost her little boy, and for her entire family to also have gone through this process. There is no question in my mind that we are at this moment here with Ms. Jimenez because she has attorneys who have given her case, who have given her the attention, the determination, and the love that she and her case deserve. And there is no question in my mind that there are countless people in our criminal justice system throughout the state of Texas and throughout the country who likely also have valid claims of innocence, who do not have access, who do not have the opportunity to be represented by the counsel that Ms. Jimenez does. And for that reason, it is crucial that our office at the Travis County District Attorney's Office and that district attorneys across the country aggressively seek out truth, aggressively pursue innocence. And we are grateful to have had the opportunity to do that in this case. And it's what we're going to continue to do as we go forward.
I appreciate that. And I want to turn it back to Vanessa to talk about the scale of the work there is to do. Because when we're talking about flawed forensics or junk science or whatever you want to call it, and a prosecutorial urge to seek conviction at great human cost, I'm wondering, Vanessa, if you could talk to us about how pervasive this is in your experience in the legal system, and why does it still seem to be such a pervasive thing?
Well, it is extraordinarily common, unfortunately. Over, half of the DNA exonerations have involved, faulty forensics. And just, I think, the problem of wrongful convictions in general is much more pervasive than, people would like to think. And that is tied to the fact that, we have a system of mass incarceration in this country, and it's just the amount of volume that goes through the system, and having an adversarial process where our indigent defense systems are in crisis and underfunded so often leads to where people plead guilty just to put an end to the criminal legal process. Over 95% of cases end and resolve in some type of guilty plea, and it's we've turned into, in large, a conviction machine rather than a system that is built to get to the truth. And so, particularly in cases of women who are wrongfully convicted, very often they are convicted of crimes that involve faulty forensics and involve the death of somebody who was in their care, either, they're a family member or a caregiver. And so this is a common theme that we see. And oftentimes it is tied to race. And if a child is presented at the hospital or dies, and the caretaker is white, it's more often perceived as an accident, versus a person of color being the parent or caretaker. And there is, as is throughout the criminal justice system, a rush to criminality and a thought that something must have been done. So I think that Rosa's case here touches upon a lot of issues that are very prevalent throughout the system, from explicit and implicit bias, to faulty forensics, to indigent defense, and just really the fact that we have a criminal legal system that needs to be changed.
So speaking of changes, Dia Garza, I know you're going to have to go in 1 minute, so I want to get back to you before you have to go. And I wanted to ask you, there's wrongful conviction review where you can work to undo cases like Rosa's. And then there's stuff you can do on the front end to prevent this from ever happening again, and to prevent people not only from being wrongly convicted, but prevent people from having so much force of the state applied to them that they plead guilty to things they didn't do. And I'm wondering if you could talk for just a second about what you're doing on that front end to prevent your office from even inadvertently coercing people towards injustice.
Well, first of all, we have to be clear that our criminal justice system, not only here in Texas, but across the country, absolutely weighs most heavily on working class communities and communities of color. Those are the communities that have borne the brunt of our mass incarceration crisis in this country. And we have an obligation here in our office, and I believe in offices across the country, to ensure, first and foremost, that we're keeping our community safe, but also that we're having a real conversation about what safety is. For so long, we have been told that what public safety is locking up as many working class people or people of color as we can, that if we just did that, that would make our communities more safe. But we know that's not true. We know that what public safety is access to a good job. What public safety is access to good schools, and to good healthcare. What public safety is stability. Stability is what keeps our community safe. And so, unfortunately, we don't have time in just a minute to walk through all of the changes that we have in store. But let me say that that the changes that are necessary are from the beginning to the end of our criminal justice process, from reviewing probable cause affidavits, to the process of setting bail, to the process of charging, to the process of playing. We will be examining every single nook and cranny of our criminal justice system here in Travis County, and starting 3 weeks ago and continuing every day for the next 4 years, making reforms to make sure that our criminal justice system is fair and treats everyone equally and keeps our community safe in a way that's rooted in evidence and data.
Thank you so much for that, Dia Garza. And I know we promised that we'd let you go at 2:15, so I can let you go. You're welcome to stay on the hot seat. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. And I also just want to take a second again to tell Ms. Jimenez how good it is to see you in person, and to thank you and your entire team for your diligent and steadfast work on this. You have done a great thing today, and I'm so sorry it took so long.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your help too.
We appreciate, I feel like that this case, this is, how the system should function, how it how it resolved is how it should function.
Well, Rosa, I want to turn back to you again for a second, because your perspective, of course, on this case is unique. And you also have had the experience of, over a decade in prison, surrounded by other women whose experiences may or may not have mirrored yours. And I'm wondering if you can share some of the experiences you heard of, or relationships you had of others who you feel deserve a similar second look from other DAs in the Texas system.
It's a lot of innocent people in there, that I had met through the years that I've been there, that I got close to them, that I believe they're innocent too. And when I left that place, I made me a promise that I was not going to forget about them, because I know how it feels to be there. And those people were there for me for almost 18 years. They became my family too. So it's good people in there that need help. They need the people's help, your help, attorneys' help, that nobody's listening to them. They forgot about them and they try to fight and fight, and nobody listened to them. And it's so sad when you are there by yourself and you feel helpless.
I know also that a lot of the folks you describe are not facing just one threat. There's the criminal system, there's the family court system, there's the immigration system. There's a lot that's working together and kind of tearing apart some of the families that you describe. Vanessa, I'm wondering if you could talk about the role that ICE has played in recent days. I understand that Rosa was unfortunately forced to have dealings with immigration authorities as well, navigating the most recent events in this case.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so Rosa did have a immigration hold on her, a detainer issued, and is facing potential deportation, and so that posed an obstacle yesterday. We all had fought so hard, and I'm joined here also with Sarah Brown from the law firm Foley and Gardner, who, when we talk about what it takes to overturn a wrongful conviction, not only was it the Innocence Project, but Sarah Brown has, been working on Rosa's case for, over 8 years. And we were recently joined by the law firm of Kirkland and Ellis. And so, really just the amount of resources that, have to go into overturning a wrongful conviction are so immense, because all of the, every procedure is against you. But, finally getting to that point where Judge Sage, recommended that that the conviction in this case be vacated, because we had presented clear and convincing evidence of innocence and had shown that Rosa's conviction was based on false medical testimony. It was just getting to that point, and then Judge Sage ordered bond while the case goes up to the Court of Criminal Appeals, which in Texas is the court that must act to formally vacate a conviction. So it was just finally getting to this point after so many years, and then having the threat of Rosa be deported, and those proceedings, by nature of how the system works, kicked in yesterday morning, and actually she was taken into ICE custody, and we believed the process, was getting going for deportation. And so that was extraordinarily troubling. And, thankfully ICE took a look at the case. We were working with immigration lawyers, a big team, of lawyers, Kate Goldfinch and Jackie Mann, and also the Mexican consulate has been a source of support in Rosa's life from 2003 to the present. And so, we just, had a lot of, energy and work going into this yesterday, but, ICE reviewed the case, and ultimately, they maintain a lot of discretion, and they decided to exercise that discretion to have Rosa, to enable her release yesterday so that she could walk out. and spend this day today with her kids and be out of prison, and while she's she's fighting for formal exoneration, and hopefully the CCA will put an end to this when they review the case. But so they and that's like that humanity, recognizing humanity, that compassion that ultimately ICE exercised in the end, and that we're hearing from Jose Garza, is just something that is so absent in the criminal legal system. And that's but it did prevail here ultimately.
We're all feeling very lucky and happy that it did. Rosa, I want to close with you. I noticed that your t-shirt says "Think Happy Thoughts," and I'm wondering, after such a heartbreaking 18 years, I'm wondering if you could share with us what thoughts are keeping you going and what you're most looking forward to about what lies ahead.
The restoration with my kids, our relationship, seeing my mother again, that is what's keeping me going. And I just trying to enjoy every day. I'm going to take it day by day. Every day's now a new day. That's what I'm going to do.
Well, Rosa, we wish you the best of luck. Sarah and Vanessa, thank you so much for being here with us. We are completely honored to have gotten a chance to talk with you all. And I hope that every day that lies ahead is better than the one before it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whew. It's been a privilege to be able to bring you this exclusive interview here on the Appeal Live. And to take a moment to think with you about not only Rosa's case, but the thousands or hundreds of thousands or more people like Rosa, separated from their families by an interplay of criminal systems and immigration systems and powerful systems that can really tear families apart and steal years, if not decades, from people's lives. So thank you so much for joining us here on the Appeal Live. I'm Emily Galvin Almanza. You can always find us here, the Appeal News or the Appeal on Facebook or Twitter. And we look forward to bringing you more stories and to being joined by you again soon. Take care.